My name is Jeff Livingston. I have the privilege of being the moderator for this panel today. One of our panelists I haven't seen yet, but as soon as he shows up, we'll bring him up to the stage.
I think the bouncers are not letting him through the door.
I believe he will make himself understood, and Paula will make sure that Chong-Hao gets in when he arrives too. So a couple of ground rules as we start here. I've had the pleasure of moderating a panel very much like this at each of the last several ASU-GSVs. I know some of you have been in all of them. Let me hear you. There you are. But there are a couple of things we need to understand first. First of all, we are going to have the conversation that I want to have with people that I love, and y'all get to watch. Second of all, everybody up here, and Chong-Hao when he gets here, could start talking now, talk nonstop for 45 minutes, and everybody in this room would be glad they did. So there's a whole lot of people up here with a whole lot to say. We're not going to get to say it all. Third, I could reproduce this panel by picking somebody I know and love from every single table here, and y'all could come up and have this conversation too. So we are not here to have the equity conversation. We are here to kick off your conversations about this topic that we want you to continue to have throughout this process. In fact, we have made space for two of those conversations immediately after this. One led by the Sharif's team, and the other led by Susan Asinyambi. Is she here? She probably couldn't get in. You will see it in the agenda. If you have something to say, if you say, I wish when Jeff said that he would have called on me and I could have said this, go there and say it there, right? And we'll do it that way. The other thing that I need you to know as we get started is that everybody up here knows each other, respects each other. We are friends, we are colleagues, and when necessary, we are co-conspirators. So we intend to have the real conversation about equity. If you wanted a cartoon version, you're in the wrong place, and you should give up your seat to somebody who wants to have the real conversation. So I'll start us off this way. I see you, Susan. She's one of the people leading the conversations after, so you can just follow her if you want to keep going. Y'all, I'm mad. A 16-year-old going to pick up his younger siblings knocked on the wrong door in Kansas City, and the person who opened the door shot first. And then when the 16-year-old fell to the ground, shot him again in the head. I'm angry about that, in part because it reminds me that since the last time we were in this space talking about this, the people who hate us for our freedom have gotten really bold. And it's become a question that people can ask out loud whether a 16-year-old child should be shot for knocking on the wrong door. So, Heather, dear Heather, I know that the work you do with the Campaign for Our Shared Future is at the front lines of pushing back against some of this, so I want to start with you about this work. I'd love it if you could share just a few minutes of just how bad it's gotten and what you all are doing to help to fix it.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me. I'm a first-timer. Any other first-timers, ASU, GSV? Me too. Yay. First of all, people talk about the culture wars, And I said at EdLock last month or a few weeks ago, this is not really culture wars, this is fascism. It is un-American. I am an American. I have lived my entire life in this country. I have a right to my freedom and to access to the democracy and a set of public goods, public education being one of them. I am a mother of 2 children, so my parents' rights also matter. And we cannot let them do un-American things and claim that this country is not our country. So we have to raise our voices, and they've gotten very bold. So culture wars is a moniker around what I would call un-American activity, like book banning. Un-American activity, like I am going to stop you from learning about the true history. I'm going to whitewash what is happening. Un-American activity that in the classrooms, K-12 classrooms, that mirrors the kind of curtailing of voting rights or reproductive rights. This is all one fight. So I think it's really important for us to think about we are living a part of history that if we don't win, we're going to wake up in a nightmare. Just a nightmare where this country is nothing near the promise. So at the campaign, I left my cushy job in philanthropy in July of last year to run this campaign, and we work to stop the proposal, passage, and implementation of anti-equity laws, those laws that are sweeping the states. We are trying to provide information and intel for advocates to ensure that the moms of the liberty of the world do not go unanswered. We do strategic comms with education folks to help them take the targets on their back off their backs because they're using guerrilla tactics. They will tape you secretly. They will use your words against you. And so we want people to understand that if you access a simple language, you can do your work. You have to do that with integrity, so we can have a side conversation about that. So we do a lot of strategic comms. We do field and organizing across as many states as I can raise money for to be engaged at the local and state level. And then we have a C4, and so we are endorsing candidates for school board. And if you've been in K-12 for as long as I have, we kind of ignored that for a really long time. We are nonpartisan and common ground, so anybody who wants to take our equity survey, we will endorse you. We'll find some way to get some of our money to you. But importantly, because as a country right now, our democracy is under attack, and we live under minority rule in so many states because they have gerrymandered and because voting rights are under attack. So what that means is that we really have to show up, and we need local communities where we actually have more political power to say, no thank you, state legislature. We're going to do this for our children. That's really important.
Thank you. I'm going to tell a story because I think it's important to do so here. There is a professional development organization that does good work in a lot of places, whose president told me that one of her PD providers called her to announce that someone he had been dating worked for an organization that had been recording their dates, trying to get him to say things political about the work he was doing in schools. They are hiring people to seduce professional developers into saying things that they will record and put out into the world here. Now, this is a surprise to most of you. You have not heard this story because Heather's organization helped them deal with this situation. So when she says strategic comms, she knows what she's talking about. When she says she has helped people who are on the front lines fight back, she knows what she's talking about. do go to campaignforourSharedFuture.org and learn more about this work, please. Agreed? Okay, thank you.
Can I offer that if you just say all the shit out loud in the rooms like this, then you don't have to worry about somebody taping your conversation behind the scenes. If you just speak the truth all the time, I'm sorry, my Surge folks are like, why is she cussing already? I feel like, okay, I just want to say this. That's the last time I'm going to apologize because I'm not sorry for it.
I know you're not sorry.
I say all the time, I recognize that we have to flex because those of us who are in this work, have been leading this work, we understand that we can't go into certain rooms and say the things that we would say among family and be understood. So I often say it is fine to change what you say to be understood as long as you don't change what you do, right? Because too often what people think is that I have to contort what I do in order to make it fit someone else's narrative. And the truth of the matter is like, no, actually, you can say something. I don't speak to my elderly aunts in the same way that I would speak to you out of deference and respect for them, not because I mean something different. And I know that there are some of us who have the luxury of being in spaces, and I own that I have the luxury of having founded an organization that is unapologetically all the things. And because of that, there are spaces that I'm not invited to. And I'm okay with that because I have friends who are invited and we can talk about what's happening in the room that I don't get invited to and all those sorts of things. So all the work is not for everybody. And I think it's just important, particularly in this room, because I know what so many of you do, recognize that the fight is a communal fight. It is a collective fight. It is not all on individual shoulders. Therefore, if you happen to be a person that you don't want to modify what you say and you don't want to be worried about what someone is taping or those sorts of things, then you might need to be in a space where you can say what you want and recognize that you need to also build community and connection and collaboration with those folks who choose to be internal innovators versus outside agitators. So, leave it with me.
It's a choir.
It is.
And you need to know who is singing alto and who is the soprano and which song we sing in, etc.
And we need to not vilify each other because we choose to sing different parts.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Chong-Hao, welcome to the party.
I am so sorry, everyone. I had 2:30 on my calendar, and that was wrong. Sorry.
We knew you were worth waiting for, my friend. Thank you for being here. Chong-Hao, I'd like to continue this line of questioning a little bit, because you did something I thought was really brave just a few days ago. You are doing lots of brave things all the time.
What'd I do?
I'll tell you what you did. We were both at a conference organized by and for a respect for high-quality instructional materials in a room full of state leaders who had been all day long throwing around words like Tier 1, Tier 2. And Chong-Hao, from the stage, said, are we going to acknowledge the fact that the research at IES says that labeling a child Tier 2 is harmful to that child? Or are we going to pretend that didn't happen? I'm sorry, I can't hear your snaps. And because you are that dude, that's why we knew this was a conversation that we wanted you to be in this year too, about that, because that's real too, right? We fall in love with our frameworks and sometimes ignore new information. Please tell these lovely people whatever you want to about that topic.
Well, I am so deeply honored to be with the four of you and to be in this room with all of you. My name's Chong-Hao Fu. I'm the CEO at Leading Educators. Quick poll, how many people here are educators, would identify as educators? And thank you. That's what I thought. And the reason I ask is this is a conference that makes you doubt what you know as an educator. And that is what I experienced with Jeff the other day at this other conference, where it's like, we know labeling students as tier 2 and pulling them out of core instruction is damaging. The research says you actually lose 10% of your learning every year that happens. High quality study, 2015, across 13 states, hundreds of schools. We know that. But then we kind of doubt what we know all the time. And I was talking to Heather earlier, it was like, the thing that I actually want to say that I think is the most controversial is we know how to improve schools. We know that with better coaching, better curriculum, focusing on teacher mindset, focusing on student relationships, looking at the data, rinse, repeat, do it over and over and over again, schools get better. We've seen it in cities like DC, like Chicago, and yet we doubt ourselves as a field that we somehow don't know how to improve schools. And I think sometimes it's because of spaces like this that make us doubt that we know that the work of improving schools is people-powered work. It is work that's about implementation, it's about relationships, it's about movement. And that's really central. We have to know as a profession that we know some stuff. Not that we know all the things, because a lot of what we've achieved has been in math and reading. And anyone who's watching the news knows that with the coming of AI, which I'm sure we're going to get to in a second, Jeff, like anything that an AI chat GPT can do is probably not going to set our kids up for generational wealth. And so we know literacy is a path to freedom, but it is not enough. And we need to ask ourselves, what actually is the secondary education that our kids need to generate wealth? Because what is the class right now that we would want our high schoolers to be taking to set them up for wealth? And we have known for multiple years it is not Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, except for very thin slice of students. And so we have to ask ourselves these questions, like, we know some things, we know how to make schools better, but if we are targeting the wrong things, if we're not working in coalition, then we're not going to do it. And the last thing I just want to say, to your point about the choir.
Go ahead.
I got a mic. Jeff,
ahead.
you gave me a mic.
Go ahead.
I was talking to a philanthropist who represents a multi-billion-dollar fund. And they fund climate change, they fund education, they fund medicine. And they're like, you know what, we're going to do education last because we don't know what to fund in education right now. They're like, in climate change, when we talk to people, it's preventing the planet from heating up by 1.5 degrees, getting to zero carbon by getting electric cars, fixing the food, decarbonizing the power grid. We know exactly what to do. We know what the measures are. We know all the pieces fit together. There is no plan in education anymore. There is no coalition in education anymore, and we need to rebuild it. It is the people in this room working together that can rebuild a new coalition for education to think about what our young people need to flourish. We're going to need Sharif to rebuild the Black educator pipeline. We're going to need Heather to defend us all to shape the narrative. We're going to need Carmita to find proximate leaders of color. And we're going to need Jeff to shape the market. And we're going to need all of us who know how to improve schools working together. But we have to tell people we know what we're doing.
My friends are dope as Sharif. You and I have both been on this panel every time we've done it. Please bring the vital work you are doing around the Black teacher pipeline into this conversation and tell us what Philadelphia needs us to hear today.
Yeah, it's great to be here again, and a continuation of the conversation. I'm glad you always frame it as this is the start and a continuation of, and as you said, as I look around, there's tons of folks who could lead this as well and are leading it through their work. Some folks have think tanks, other folks have think and do tanks, and that's part of, all of this membership. For us, looking at the, centering a national Black teacher pipeline for us is not only, an integral part of like what justice could look like. In our first iteration, we talked about like some people want to live in equity, but the actual goal is justice. We shouldn't live in equity forever. That means we're tinkering around the edges. We're playing. Justice is the actual work, right? And so for us, rebuilding a black teacher pipeline that was very deliberately undermined is an absolutely critical part of all of this work. But what we try to do is make sure that we are inviting our youth to be a part of it. Making sure that we're inviting black youth into solving problems that they had no hand in creating. And for them, you know, this shirt that I'm wearing, this is our youth's, they said this is our rallying cry and our demand. We need black teachers. They said it's simple, and I was like, oh, I thought y'all were gonna do some TikTok, smoke, you know, hip hop and stuff, but they're like, no, we don't want anyone to be distracted with our creativity. We want them to hear what we're saying. And, you know, that struck us so much that we've been just like helping to amplify, you know, and you can hashtag We Need Black Teachers, you'll see some of the stories that have come out across the nation, because this is what students across the country are saying, right? But we have to recognize, you know, Dr. Jarvis Givens, if you haven't read his 2 books, you know, he quotes Carter G. Woodson, and I think this is, you know, people recognize Carter G. Woodson as, you know, founder of Black History Month, but what they don't recognize is that he was a teacher that was fired from Howard University, because he said this is the framework for educating black children.
Fired from where?
Howard University.
Okay, I just want.
Yeah. HU, right? Like the original, the Mecca, all of those things. This black man was fired from that. And then the thing about it, that story still resonates with many of us when we're advocating for black children. You can still be fired for that. But one of the things that he said was, black people, and you know, through all of this, we're not like keenly aware of history, and this is part of like what we use as our pedagogical framework and our andragogical framework as well as for the adults. He said black people are the only ones in this country where criminality and literacy were equal punishments. You could be dismembered for stealing something, but you could also be dismembered for having a book in your hand. And when I think about that, and he also said, you know, there would be no lynching if it weren't for the schoolhouse. And so if there would be no lynching if it weren't for the schoolhouse, would there be all of this, you know, anti-black venom if it weren't for the schoolhouse? Where does it start? Where are they attacking first? School boards, districts, curricula, right? And so when I think about like, the black youth who are saying we need more black teachers, what are they saying? They're not just saying, oh, I need somebody to look like me, even though that's what people are saying. Yeah, listen, the representation is absolutely critical. But what's more painful if the person that looks like you is the one that's meting out the anti-blackness? Right? So it has to be more than that, right? What they're expecting from black educators.
Wait. Black people can be anti-black? Sure.
You know what? It's a shock to me because growing up, I didn't know those kind of people. You know what I mean? I was surrounded by, folks who were like, nah, this is, we love our community with such a depth of our being. Like we are here to serve you. Like that was the ecosystem I grew up in. And so to be introduced to different type of black folks was a shock to me as a young man. But I recognize like students are still experiencing that in multiple different ways. And so they want to be, and our Freedom School tradition is train your replacements. So how do we train our replacements, these black youth, to be able to run faster, think smarter, and win?
There you go. So ladies and gentlemen, this conference every year for the past several years has honored at least one, sometimes two, innovators of color. Join me in celebrating the fact that Sharif El-Mekki is getting that honor this year.
What's so interesting about your accolades, and I'm a fan, try to be a day one, right, is this dichotomy around representation, which is real popular, okay? So yes, I want one of every flavor, but then you come right behind that with, but this is about black liberation. Are y'all serious? And one of the things that I'm really struggling actually to put words to is how do you help people understand that our liberations are bound up together, whatever flavor we're in. You know, my favorite framework is the El-Baker, and I live around a radical love, which sometimes means people are stepping all over my back, right? Calling me out in lots of ways because I'm trying to build a broader coalition that is about if every young person has access to something that affirms them and that brings them together with people, then we're all going to be all right. But I do want to just raise up that, like, there's something we need to be worrying about when folks love representation and representation alone, right? So there's a reason why there's an attack on K-12 schools now as the democracy and as the public good becomes better at addressing Black and brown and people of color exclusively, right? We don't need public schools anymore. You could have $8,000 in a backpack on your back and go buy some trampolines in Arizona. That's what they are selling on the other side. So I think it's really important for us to think about, like, yes, we want all of our people, we all want to be at the table, but what are we signing up for? And how do we have solidarity with folks who don't look like us?
That's right. That's right. So when I asked Chong-Hao and Heather to join this panel this year, they both asked me the same question. What is this? What's the topic we're going to talk about? And I gave them both the same answer, which is, this is Jeff talking to his dope friends about whatever he wants to talk about, and then we give a title to it as well. This year's title was about generational wealth. And so I want to acknowledge that title and go in that direction a little bit too. To be clear, we have been talking about generational wealth since we started. All of the things that we talk about are connected. Chong-Hao mentioned that he was sure ChatGPT would come up because he knows I have been obsessed with it since November. Some of y'all know this too. I am obsessed with it because I am geeking out and having fun doing it. But I'm also obsessed with it because I know without question that if this is not developed with and for the kind of kids I wake up every day thinking about, it's going to become something that happens to those kids. So I am obsessed with generative AI. I am listening to all the conversations going on in the hallway in this building about generative AI, because I really think we have to lean in, and I think y'all need to lean in too. Especially because of the old mantra, garbage in, garbage out. Where did the data come from that is training these models? What does that data say about the capacities of people who look like me? How much of that data is based on the experience of people who do not communicate with their grandmothers in English? And what can we do to make sure that this wealth creation engine, which, make no mistake, if y'all are listening to the conversations I am listening to in the hallways here, this is going to be a wealth creation engine, is accessible to the kinds of Black kids, Latino kids, poor kids, English language learners that we all think about all the time. Chong-Hao, what do you think about generative AI? I know I'm not the only person geeking out about this, but because you are too, so what are you thinking?
Well, let's acknowledge the limits that, Carmita, when you ran Google's Bard around what's their Search Institute, I believe it told you was...
Apparently, white people founded Search
White people
Institute.
founded Search.
Yes.
So that was a mistake.
Not really, y'all, but that's what AI said.
Now, let me be clear, because a few of the people were not on that Facebook chain. Carmita asked ChatGPT about Surge, the institution that she founded, runs, and is the beating heart of, and it described Surge as being founded by white people. Didn't it? Didn't it? Okay.
So the technology's not there yet.
I would say technology is, because who designed it? And what was the mindset of those who designed it? That piece is going to be implanted, right? Like in there. So,
Yeah. So, couple thoughts. I think we have the wrong value set right now in our country for what's about to come. Companies that are using ChatGPT, 48% of them plan to lay off employees and replace them with AI. Wealth is going to accumulate, but the way that our value set is turning out, it's going to accumulate in the hands of a few. So whoever is using it, to Jeff's point, whoever is using it to create new content, new media, new culture, that's who's going to benefit. And right now we have school districts like New York City DOE, out of really good intentions, banning the use of ChatGPT for all students and all teachers. And so you have a double thing going on where students are in those classrooms saying, I can't use this technology that could help me answer this question. And then we're also not asking our educators to play, to experiment, to work with technologists, to think about what the future possibilities might be. And we need a moment right now where people are huddling and playing. Google, right now, all their executives are huddled up in a boardroom, panicked, because they are worried that their search engine is going to stop being relevant because of ChatGPT. So they are working around the clock, throwing up ideas on how they might incorporate that new technology into their business. We have to be doing the same thing. In this room, we need to be playing. We need to be inviting our kids to play. We need to be thinking about what's next, because we have that opportunity to shape and create. But if we ban, if we don't play, then what's to come? Because I think there is a new skill set that is about evaluating knowledge, that is about creativity, that is about knowing how to shape the right prompts. And I've been using it every day. Every time I have to write a funder pitch, every time I have to write a session plan, I've been running it through. And it's eerie how good some of these things actually are. But, so anyway.
Thank you. Carmita, I want to come to you next. Because I know that at Surge, you were taking this generational wealth thing seriously.
Yes, and I want to interrupt something.
Okay.
Because I think too often when we are in these conversations about generational wealth, it becomes very individualistic, which is frankly not what we're rooted in. That is not our ancestral lineage. And it is possible to think about generational wealth accumulation for our individual students and our individual families, while also thinking about how that is communal wealth. And too often, and the reason I want to say that out loud is because if the charge is listen to what people are saying out there, then often those conversations out there are not about community. They are not about what is best for me is inextricably linked to what is best for you and all those things. And this comes back to, like, people get corrupted and forget who you're there for in the first place. So I just want to offer into this space, it is okay to learn from and hear and ingest the things that are happening around here, particularly around innovation, AI, all those things, but then to shed the things that we know are not ours. Because too often that we seek to mirror that which we are actually seeking to transform or dismantle. And if we're not, and that is why you end up with people who look like us, look like our babies, in positions of power that are not leveraging that power or that position to dramatically transform the experience for students, because they're so worried about holding on to that little piece of power and that position that they aren't willing to say and do the things that we know may cause you to lose that job. But if I know that I've already teed up somebody to take the job after I lose it, then I don't worry about it. So that was my 2 cents about that, because I think it's important to be explicit in rooms like this, because it can sound like what we're saying is, hear what they're doing, go do that. No, you already know more than they do and can run circles around them when it comes to what your students need. Hear and take in the things that may be on the cusp of what we have not been exposed to, and again, eat the fish, spit out the bones, all of that.
All right.
Jeff, can I just,
Go ahead.
When I first came to the conference, maybe 5, 6 years ago, had a panel and, got into it with a 19-year-old. I mean, he was probably older than 19, but a young white guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Khakis, polo, you know what I mean? You know the deal, right?
Patagonia vest.
yeah.
Well, I was there.
And I took exception because, it reminded me because you're, talking about like what this technology, why people are doing, what their intention and mindset is, and who they're replacing, right, to generate their wealth, right? When Carmita talks about communal wealth, that's the opposite. Like, I can use this to replace you. And it makes me think, one, what he had said was, and this was again 5, 6 years ago, the app that he created was something that could replace teachers. And he thought he was like a genius for saying something like that, for thinking it, and for trying to design it.
While he was sitting next to you.
Yeah. And what they, exactly. He ain't know he's gonna get his head bit off. But, there's this idea that, not understanding communal, not understanding the connection and the relationship between teaching and learning and human beings, the humanity, was a, just a deep loss. He was just, it was so out of his realm in this paradigm of thinking of what service means. And then the other thing it makes me think of are how many educators who look like many of us in this room who tell kids, get education to get a job. And projecting the best you can do is find somebody to work for, which is really the opposite of generational wealth in a lot of different instances for our people. Plus, they're about to be cut out of that system, that framework.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Carmita, you always take the conversation where it needs to go, despite where I want to take it.
You keep inviting me back.
Exactly, because I want that. And now what I want to bring into the room in these last few minutes are some innovations that I think are pertinent to the conversation. Could you tell the people here about Surge Angels and Power Surge?
Yes, so this is not a Surge commercial. This is a commercial for the dope folks that we amplify and elevate through their work. This is a commercial for Catalina Figueroa. If you don't know her, she has developed an app which is effectively UberX for translation services, democratizing access to translation. You need to talk to her. It's Robbie Curry, Marcus Literacy Project, effectively changing the game in literacy through gaming. I could go across this room and say this. What we do at Surge is we invest in, amplify, elevate the genius that already exists within our communities. And it is about saying that we should all feel disheartened when we look at leadership of systems across this education ecosystem, whether they're school leaders, superintendents, board leaders, all those sorts of things. And there is a gulf between who those folks are and the families and students that they represent. Again, this isn't just about getting folks into those seats, because frankly, I believe that without us, many of these folks would make it to those seats anyway, because that's just how dope they are. But it is about taking them through a transformative experience that is head, heart, and spirit that says, I see you, and you can dispel that lie that you have to shed pieces of who you are in order to be in these seats of privilege and power. And instead, you can take those things that make you uniquely and, dare I say, supremely qualified to lead and dramatically transform the experience for young people, families, and students. That is what Surge does. Power Surge does that for CEOs and superintendents. If you're interested in Birmingham, Alabama, come talk to me. That's why it's crazy that white people founded Surge, because I'm real black. Very interesting. But for us, Surge is about elevating, amplifying that which already exists and dispelling this notion that we just can't find them. We can't find them. It's like you're not looking, and you are so busy telling them implicitly and explicitly that they are not prepared, that you are instead handcuffing them, and we tend to do that differently.
Thank you. I told you we would run out of time, and we're about to. So let me say this too. Surge Angels is a business competition that somebody I know and love created to invest real cash in businesses formed by people in this room.
Surge Angels, raise your hands so people know where to go give the money. Yeah, okay.
And Carmita's leadership in that area is wonderful. She also calls on her friends and says, I need you to go to Austin next week. And he says, yes, Carmita, I will be there to judge the competition. But again, this is the start of the conversation. Keep having the conversation about the why of what we do. Keep having the conversation about what you want the rest of this conference to be thinking about. Go and join Susan Asanyambi in a continued conversation of this. Go and join also Sharif. Please, go ahead, Chong-Hao.
Tomorrow, 11:45, if you want to continue the conversation on technology, I'm on a panel with Google and efficacy, 11:45.
And go listen to Chong-Hao School Google tomorrow at 11:45 as well.
And vote for your school board.
Vote.
Run for school board.
Run for school board, yeah.
Thank you all. They're going to kick us out of the room now. Please continue the conversation. Thank you for your time and attention. Celebrate this panel for me one more time.